guys, welcome back to my craft room and back to our last book of Crafty book talk for this year. Have not decided yet if I'm gonna, keep doing it. I kind of think I'm gonna do just whenever I find a book that kind of fits with the theme of Crafty book talk, then I'll talk about it rather than having a list that I go on, because having the list I don't think worked too well. Because I feel like a lot of the times I find books and that's when they are relative to what I'm thinking of, what I'm like wanting to really learn about. So I think it would be a better experience and maybe these books would have a better chance if I didn't have a list that I had to stick to. Uh, but today's book is The Artist's Way, A Spiritual Path to Higher Creativity. And oh my gosh, you guys, I couldn't finish it. I got to page, I think it was, let me see, I wrote it down in my notes. Page 73 out of 200, 200 something. So I couldn't keep reading it. It might be okay for some people, but the author just really did not vibe well with me. She, I hate, kind of going into personal details, but from what I could vibe from her writing style and the way she kind of approached different topics about creativity, I felt that she had something in her past that did not settle well with her, and she's trying to, I don't know, cover up it or something. She just isn't, she's not okay with something right now, at least when she wrote this. So a lot of the times she's kind of contradictory, and also she tends to come off as, I don't really know the word, but she's very like a flowy, flowery talker type, because she not quite rambles, but she's trying to add her own words into it, but her personality or her personal story is getting in the way, and then she's also trying to teach it, I feel. And sometimes when you go into a teaching mode, you can kind of get into like this whole I'm higher and mightier because I know, or I've kind of witnessed this or I've been through it. And oh, I just I do not like reading books that are like that, because I feel like, if I'm wanting to learn from your situation, that I really want to hear like your actual words about it. I don't want to hear the perfect side of it. I don't want to hear the really overly worded sections, because I want to hear the nitty-gritty of what did you actually think, which is one point that she actually brings up in her book, that I read, which I'll get into here in a second, why I agreed with her and didn't agree with her. But one thing she does say is you need to have the time to, she calls it the morning pages, and she says that you should write down, oh, I feel like I'm gonna sneeze. You should write down just a string of consciousness. Oh gosh, it's a tickling. um, but a string of consciousness of what you're thinking, and not really think about editing it or having somebody actually look at it. It's just you putting down onto word or onto paper words that you don't necessarily need to be perfect. And that's going to help with your perfectionism, and also if you have an inner critic. So she has a lot of good nuggets in here, which we've read before. Well, I guess technically we've talked about before, um, or I've heard about before. So it's very hard for me to, well, let me rephrase this. It's very easy for me to tell when she separates her actual personality from the information she is giving to us in this book. And I feel like, okay, even let me read you the thing she states in her little introduction. She states, while using, teaching, and sharing tools I have found, devised, oh my gosh, divined, and been handed. So she says, even in her little introduction, that the way she worded this, which usually when you are typically writing, you're going to say what you mean first. I don't know how to really explain that. Typically, when you're talking about something, if you're really excited about something, or if you have just learned about something, you're going to say that thing first and then kind of backpedal, or, kind of add on to it, if that makes sense. So while she says, while using, teaching, and sharing tools I have found, devised, divined, and been handed. So she found them and then she devised them. So most of this is not actually her work or her actual thoughts. Well, the book is mainly her thoughts and whatnot, but the tools that she is trying to tell you, that is, because this is technically a textbook, she gives you different prompts to do during every week. These tools she has found from other things, and then she has devised, divined, and then also been handed. So I feel like I would have been fine rereading those, which I was fine with rereading. It's the parts where she starts adding on to, with her own anecdotes, her own stories, her own thoughts and opinions, because she comes across as kind of rude. Um, Let me see. I'm kind of going backwards in my notes because it's kind of hard to tell you why I didn't like the book from starting from the beginning. It's where I ended, is where I was like, I put my foot down. This is why I don't like it. I mean, hopefully you guys will find some nuggets in there, but I'm thinking with this book, you just get a different book. But what might annoy me might not annoy you. But one of the things which I have been very interested, this past, well, maybe this past month, no, 2 months, I've been really interested in the id, ego, and superego. And I've been really trying to learn about that because that's something that I struggle with. It's a psychological, or psychiatrist way of kind of seeing what is wrong with you. It's a very interesting, in-depth, but also it's very easy to understand once you look into it. But basically I have an issue with, now I'm gonna forget, I believe it's the id, which is your inner child. Essentially, you have your inner child, you have your rules, and then you have the balance, the judgment, or whatever. And I am a very big stickler on rules. I haven't been very big on inner child. So inner child, she says, is your artist. which I can understand for some people that being an artist is your inner child because, it's free form. You're breaking the rules of society to go out and do what you love rather than, working a normal job. But I also feel like that's kind of giving art and artists kind of a bad rep, even though I understand what she's trying to do, but she's saying it in the wrong way, which I feel like this is the whole book, which I feel like is a lot of people. It just seems like, at least to me, things are said without really, I don't want to say that, without really thinking about it, but you know what it's kind of, they only apply it to themselves. And then they kind of are like, okay, so this works for everyone right now. But you have to think, if you're writing for someone else, because that's what she's doing right here, she's writing a textbook for someone else to read, then she can't really apply her own and only her own kind of thinking, which she does give some other examples of different people and different artists, but they tend to be her same type of story, which is very odd to me because I'm a very big person. I'm a very big believer in I want to hear every side of the story. So when I get a one-sided book, I can't vibe with it. And I feel like see, I hate saying this, but maybe if I would have read it in the beginning of the year, I might have been more okay with it. But because of my recent development of psychological, thinking for my own self and just my thoughts on creativity alone, I feel like this book it kind of put me 3 steps back. And that's why I really had to stop. And I was like, I can't finish it. Which I told you guys that was like a really big thing with me. I had to finish books. But, and I was gonna really try and, if I really don't like it, I'm gonna try and not finish a book if that ends up happening. And this really put me to the test. But a few things is, if you read the nonconformity book, this is like the same ideas, but on the opposite side, if that makes sense. Basically, the nonconformity is you're thinking about yourself. You are essentially doing self-care, if that kind of, is a better term to explain it. This one is you are going against something to try to better off yourself. See, it's hard to explain those two. It's kind of like the metaphor that I told you, was it in the last video? Last Crafty book talk, about the selfishness and what narcissism. It's kind of like that. It's a very strange line, I feel. And I'll tell you some of the reasons why. I feel like, she had just the right points. So she talks about you need support when you're trying to do creative things. But then she goes on to say, if you don't have a parent that allows you to have the money and the freedom to do this, she's essentially blaming someone else. And I liked that the nonconformity, it gave you the power. It wasn't like, your parents are the ones who should be supporting you, which she does say, afterwards. But she does this thing where she kind of goes back and forth between this is what you should be doing, but then also like this is the ideal. Kind of hard to explain, I guess. But another things is okay, the inner child is happiest when feeling a sense of security. And then she says, this is your own, you need to find out how you can be secure in yourself. But then she also goes into different details of why you wouldn't be secure. And I think the way she is doing it is ultimately making you read something, making you think about that, and then maybe thinking something else. This is such a bad description. But then she tells you, oh no, but this is what you need to be doing. Instead of giving us examples of what we should be doing, she gives examples of different things that really are not right. Oh, I know this is such a strange one. It's because I don't have, like, normally with the Crafty book talks, I read through the whole book and I gather all of the good information. But this is me looking at good information that we've already heard, and then her personality trying to take over. Because ultimately, I feel like this is the arch nemesis of the nonconformity and the four agreements. Because she kind of gives us, like, which I think she says in her book, in her little introduction, that she was an alcoholic, and she dealt with the different feelings of what artists go through of, do you need to be on alcohol to write? Do you need to be on drugs to paint? So I feel like she's kind of gone through these different horrible things, but she hasn't been able to twist it. She hasn't been able to either forgive herself or, well, I know ultimately what it is, but so one of the things she says is that she thinks people are afraid to be creative because of being something God wouldn't approve of. So she basically goes into this whole rant of she is going to, which I can't tell. She says that she believes in God, but then she goes into this whole thing about, but if you don't believe in God, then don't even, think about what I'm saying with it being God. Just think of it as the creator or the flow. But then she goes in and she talks about different passages from the Bible and things. So it's very confusing. So I can't tell, which ultimately this would be her own thing. Like, I'm not one to say, but it seems to me she's struggling with that. Because she can't be okay with saying she believes in God, because she has to write to an audience so that they buy her book, essentially. And what she ends up doing is she alienates the spiritual people, the people who don't want to read about God. But then she also alienates the people who want to read about God, because she kind of goes into some very icky situations with her words. So I know that's kind of we're getting kind of deep on this one. But she quotes God, but then she separates God. And I can't, I can't read that. Especially with where I am right now. It's just I can't, and I can't see other people, who are going on a journey either way. I can't see them being okay with reading what she is saying here. She's trying to be PC for everyone reading her book, but she ends up just, I think, maddening everyone. So, of course, she has great points in here because I do think she has taken it from other people or other books, things we've heard before. And I think that, some of her tools may be really nice. It's also tools we've heard before, just in a different kind of wording, like the morning pages and, the artist date, which you block a time to commit to your creativity. We've talked about that before, we just didn't give it a name. So I feel like it's kind of I would like to see her textbook, but as an actual textbook, not with her extra added biography, but not really a biography. Um, I'd also like to see, which I'm okay with reading spiritual books. I'm okay with reading books about God. I'm okay with sometimes reading in the middle, if they have a little bit of sprinkling of both. But I'm not okay with reading a book that is trying to be PC just to please everyone. Because that's something we learned from the nonconformity, and I think another book, but I don't remember what, which is don't please everyone. Please yourself. Write this book for yourself, and other people will read it because, other people have the same thoughts as you. So I kind of feel like it was cheap, if that if that makes sense. It was a cash grab because she's trying to appeal to the masses, which is what she does with her what she says about other things, like being mad about um you know her parents not being supportive of her endeavors, or doing drugs and alcohol to make your art great. I just feel like she is going through something, and I do not want to be a part of that because I've already gone through some things, and we're both on our own journeys. And I think that one thing that the Four Agreements says that really kind of sums this up, that she did not do, which the Four Agreements says don't take anything personally. And one thing she says in here, well, a lot of the things she says in here is dealt with taking things personally. And I think that reading this would put you a few steps behind, just from where I am at right now and, what we've read. Now, this might be a great tool for you to actually kind of see. I don't even want to recommend it. It's so hard. I feel so bad. Oh my goodness. And what's crazy is, okay, I got this at the library. Someone has had this book out since, oh my goodness, what was it? September, I think. Every time I went to the library, it was gone. So I had to get it from another library. So somebody must be going through it, or a lot of people, right? And I feel kind of bad. See, I feel really bad because a lot of people tend to like a lot of different things than me. And then when I'm like, oh, I didn't like it, I'm like, oh. I just feel bad. But it's Crafty Book Talk. I'm going to talk about what, I thought. Hopefully this wasn't too rambly. It was kind of all over the place because it wasn't typical of what my Crafty Book Talks end up being. But yeah, I wrote this down. Yeah, I put in stars. See, I'm thinking, because I already said it. This book takes you a step back from the nonconformity book. Big stars right there. She says correct things, but then she starts adding in her own points and opinions, and then everything goes wrong. That was just that was what I wrote. Along with, so normally I have 14 pages, maybe 10 pages of these little note cards, and I had 3. Oh my goodness. And I feel bad, but that's what I really thought of the book. And that's why I was like, I'm really, not scared to post this video, but I knew it's going to be such a strange one because we don't really do negative here on the channel. So it's very hard for me to be like, oh, I didn't like the book, It's kind of hard for me to, because I really try to find something in there. So hopefully, something stuck with you. But yeah, this video is getting rambly and like crazy. So I am going to sign off. I hope you guys have an amazing new year. I hope you guys read some amazing books over the year. Let me know in the comments down below if you have. And I hope you guys are having a crazy day. Good crazy, not bad crazy. And I'll see you in the next one.